I want to tell you that your people, Hispanics, been hating on me on my channel. They they leaving me comments, and I try to translate from Spanish, obviously, and it sounds funny. I know it's not the correct translation, but that's like, not that way. You look like a tree trunk, you know, and so on and so
Damn.
forth. So, hey, I've been getting. It's actually good, man. It's actually good. I'm enjoying getting some. I don't know if it's necessarily hate, but it doesn't feel like constructive criticism either. It's just this off-putting comments, like little jobs, that people would take. So I
I would call that's the very typical Latino comment. I would call that appreciation. Anytime a Latino person takes time to comment, they're more like uh they're trying to step into your world and show you their full opinion, which is a very typical Latino thing, give you their full opinion. So I wouldn't take it as negativity or hate. I would take it just more so as just them being raw and vulnerable with you. As much as it seems like you're receiving criticism because you're in the spotlight, but that's very, very typical. I mean, my whole family does that pretty much.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that made me think about self-acceptance. But I have I guess an acquaintance that I know through dancing, and she's starting a YouTube channel, and one of her topic of discussion that she actually did podcast on previously was like self-acceptance. And I thought about it because I know for me personally, but like when I was younger, there were definitely times where I think I wouldn't accept myself. So I deem it as an interesting topic of discussion. Um, have you ever felt like if you were young when you were younger, in a way that you wouldn't accept yourself?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think I felt that way a lot more when I was younger. I still feel some of it to this day at 35. But when I was younger, yeah, I mean, I felt inadequate in so many ways. I felt like one of the biggest ones is I felt incredibly underweight and skinny. I used to have like my middle school bus driver used to have this nickname for me that was every time I got on the bus and every time I left the bus, she would call me calandraca, which I believe is a Cuban slang. After a while, I got to know it. I was like, what the hell does that mean? And she's like, oh, it's like when you visit a farm and you see a bunch of cows and they all look healthy, but then there's this one cow who looks super skinny. You can see all the bones on the cow. He's like, that's a calandraca. That's what you are. I'm like, wow. I'm like, thanks. That makes me feel so special. I mean, I think that if we want to live in a world where we are all free to be transparent with each other, we also have to accept what comes with that, and that's that no one sees us as perfect. And even when I look in the mirror, I know I'm not perfect. So um, I think it's okay. I think the more tough that I can become, and that's what I've tried to do, the more tough I can become to other people's opinions of me, the more free I feel to express myself.
Interesting thing also, that I think our families, at least in my case, they don't prepare you for this type of negative opinions from outside. So, like, speaking about myself, like growing up, my mom and my grandma, I felt like really did a good job of building me up, right? And so when you even like being in your own neighborhood with your own kids, your kid, sometimes your friends or your acquaintances would say things, and then it would be hurtful, right? and
Right.
and and then you're like, I don't think mentally you always ready for that. And sometimes, I think at certain points they were like even borderline bullying. And so I don't know whether or not you can truly prepare for it, but it kind of hits harder. It hits harder because it I took it personal, and I did not know how to deal with it at the time. And like, being a young teenager is like, man, it, like, when you go through that, it's kind of confusing. It's kind of confusing. You're trying to understand like why people say some things or do certain things, and then like in high school, once I got to a certain point, I was like, all right, that's enough. You know, I think it was like went through a time period when it was sort of like scared of bullies, and then once I got, I think like 15, 16, that's where I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna resist. And yeah, I agree that, like what you was talking about, like I think society has a lot to do with how we end up thinking of ourselves, and it can really impact your sort of self acceptance or self perception. Um, but that's tough, man.
Well, one thing that I was thinking about as you said that was, what is an example of one person who has no reason to let those bad comments land, right? Because anyone can make a bad comment, but what kinds of people you would think that it's silly for them to accept a negative comment? And I thought about, like for example, Tom Brady, right? One of the greatest, probably maybe arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and he's in the limelight right now because of, kind of uncertain retirement. He decided he was going to retire, and then last minute, at the very last day that he had the chance, he's decided to come back, and then he's having, issues, and he wanted to get that one last Super Bowl ring, and Super Bowl is today,
Right.
and he didn't end up getting that, right, that last one. He got one with the Bucks, but anyways, that's an example of one guy who's a very positive guy, who's a good influence on his team, basically carried this new team, the Tampa Bay Bucks, to a Super Bowl, and still the guy gets a lot of negative comments, and he's excelled more than, anybody who wants to achieve that kind of status, in sports, and yet he gets negative comments. And so if imagine that guy came out and made like a public complaint saying, I'm tired of all the haters, I'm tired of people coming in at me and telling me this and telling, if he did that, it would almost be silly, because it's like, dude, like, you're at the top of the top, like, you've accomplished, you already have proven yourself a million times. But I don't think that it's necessary to get to such a high level of achievement to accept ourselves, because even that guy, Tom Brady, at one point was at the lower end of the totem pole. And if he had not accepted himself enough to be able to clear his mind and get on with practicing and training, he would have never got to that level that he is today. So I think that we need to accept ourselves where we're at so that we can clear our headspace and emotional space to do the work today, to freely express ourselves. So I mean, it's almost like trying to become anti fragile, right? Just to become tough skin, and just accept there's going to be good comments, there's going to be bad comments, but we should never let, in my opinion, I should never let people's positive comments on me make more of an impact than the negative comments. Like, they should just both be like this, right? The only opinion that I should really care that much about is when I sit down and look at myself to analyze myself on how to get better. And then I can take that seriously and take that critique seriously. But everything else it's just the world. The world is that's the way the world is. That's the way people in the world are. And it's okay. And I think it's okay to even love people for that. They're throwing energy your way, whether it's bad energy, it's negative energy, it's just, it is what it is. That, at least that's the way I process it.
Yeah, I think there's going to be times when we're just not going to be able to escape it. That is the way of the world. You're going to get that. You're not going to go through life without being unscarred by some people's opinions, and some of them going to be hurtful. And who knows? Like, I think people have different reasons. I mean, some of them legitimate, some of them not, but some people are hurt themselves. So they're going to project that hurt on other people. They're going to say something to you without maybe even thinking. And that, I think if you anticipate it, you can be more equipped for it. But I think as a young person, you're going to have a hard time doing so, being prepared for it, unless you have some sort of education, whether it come from you, from your parents, from school, from some other avenues. And I think if you can anticipate that, knowing that it's coming, you can be better equipped to deal with it. I certainly wasn't. I certainly wasn't. So I took some of these things to heart, and at the time, I didn't even realize that I took it to heart. But reflecting on it now, it bothered me quite a bit, right? But your example about Tom Brady, it would be impossible for him, I think, to handle all the comments if he was not leveled enough. Like you have to be prepared, especially when you're in the spotlight like he is. There's going to be a lot of pushback from people. There's going to be a lot of hate. Is not all of it going to be justified. In fact, a lot of it not going to be justified. It's just people, and especially now. I think now also it's so it's magnified even more because now we have access to everything, like the social networks, the internet. People can't even find out your phone number if they really try to, and then people can let you know directly, let alone social media and all other avenues. It's really easy, if you're not careful. It's really easy to get carried away with other people's opinions. Um, if so, as far as you know, so the other interesting part of it, how what do you think the balance lies between self acceptance and self improvement? Like, because sometimes people say things such as, "Oh, I should accept myself the way I am. I should love myself the way I am." When you hear that, are you thinking you should be like, I guess, what are you thinking when you hear like I should accept myself the way I am? What comes to your mind?
When I think about self-acceptance, I only think about it from the perspective of having self-awareness, right? It's like imagine that I wanted to present myself to the world. Imagine if I was planning a special evening, right? I was going to go out to a party and I started to get dressed, right? And I put on clothes, but I didn't have a mirror in my whole house. I didn't have a way to look at I didn't even have a front facing camera on my phone. It was just I could just look down, but I didn't, when you have a full length mirror in front of you, you can actually see how you look to other people. And so that's what I think about self-acceptance. It's self-acceptance is just giving yourself permission to look at the mirror and see where you're at today. Tomorrow, I can change my clothes and I can go to the beach and I can put something else on, right? And that's the way that I think about it. So if I want to improve, the best place to start is to know exactly where I am today. So if I want to bench 200 pounds, well, then go to the bench press and slowly start to add weight and see what weight you can actually do today. If I can't bench press 200 pounds today, that's okay. I can accept that. But with that goal in mind, I can say, okay, today I can lift 150 pounds. Then I'm going to come back in a couple of days and I'm going to lift the same thing I can lift today. I'm going to lift in a couple of days, and then I'm going to add a little bit of weight. And just like that, just accepting where I am at every day. But as long as I know where I want to end up, then it's okay. But there's this other side. I think there's another side to self acceptance that I think is a little bit less productive. And that's the kind of acceptance of accepting weakness long term. So whether it's a weak mindset or it's a weak physicality or a weak emotional state where I just kind of just blurt my emotions whenever I want and just say, hey, like imagine I was that same kid from middle school and I was super skinny, super underweight compared to anybody my height. And I just, you know what? I'm just a skinny person and I'm just always going to be skinny for my whole life, and it's okay that I'm skinny. And my doctor's telling me that I'm unhealthy underweight. Like it's not good, right? When they that would not be a good self-acceptance for me, because even by objective measures, by health professionals, they're telling me, hey, look, you're underweight, like you should start eating more. Here are some recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I would make the distinction is I can accept myself today where I'm at, but if I have a picture of what I want to be like, whether it's physically, emotionally, or intellectually, or spiritually, if I have an idea of where I want to go towards, it's also okay to aim towards that and work at it every day. and every day is going to look different.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I definitely resonate with the awareness point that you made. But to me, I almost want to separate self acceptance into two different parts, because one of them should be self love. It should be sort of like this pure, um, unconditional self love, to say that I accept myself as a human being. I love myself as a human being, because I think people tend to talk down to themselves a lot, and I think that doesn't help. You know, um, I think we have Valerie and Daphne in the house. Thank you guys for joining the live. Happy to see you here. So that the negative self-talk does not help the cause whatsoever, in my opinion, because it only creates stress hormones in your body, and that could that could really make the situation worse for you. So there has to be some sort of way to accept yourself wholly, just for the fact that you love yourself the way that you are. So that's one part of it in my mind. The second part of it, though, we can't have that conversation without also including self accountability into this picture. Because if you only going off self love and you ignoring everything else, well, then you can be unhealthy, you can be unmotivated, you could be like dead weight type of person, um, and you can just go through life like that. And then at the end of life, I think you could be the one to have regrets, not for the sake of other people. You might look back and say, well, you know what, I love myself all my life, but I haven't given my best. I haven't even given 50%, you know? And I would imagine that living with regret, especially at the point where you might not be capable to make any changes in your life or make any difference, it would be a terrible place to be at. So the self accountability comes in, and where you, similar to your point, looking more critically at yourself and asking yourself, who do I want to be? Because what's interesting to me also, I think a lot of these things are very subjective. It's not like somebody gonna come knock on your door and say, Michael, you haven't fulfilled that yet. Nobody gives a shit. The world doesn't give a damn. Like, if you look at it, at the big scale, grand scheme of things, nobody gonna come and check for your progress. So if you don't have this some sort of self awareness that you talked about, and self accountability to where you can at least define what do you want out of life and what do you want to aim for, who you want to become, then nobody else will. And so once you're able to do that and answer at least some of these questions, well, how can I keep myself accountable? Then you can move forward, keeping yourself accountable, doing things that needs to be done tangibly, in order for you to also sort of, like, it sounds kind of cliche, but earn respect for yourself, right? So you give yourself self love by default, but you also can respect yourself, which can be part of self acceptance as well. And you self respect because you're doing things that are not easy, because you're doing things that require effort, because you push yourself to do those things, because you set out to do those things. And so, in my mind, if you're able to do those both, the self love and self accountability, then it's almost like a feminine and masculine in a way. Like, if you look at it from a different lenses, it's a yin and a yang. Because if you only give yourself love all the time, love, 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 it's like only one aspect of it. If you only self accountable but no love, it's also only one aspect of it. But if you're able to combine both, it's like, yes, I'm going to love myself, but I do need, I do need that structure. I do need that accountability in my life. Then I think it seems to me that it's easier, more manageable to accept yourself, because now you have a natural cause, and then you have, cause effect, I guess you can say, cause and effect, or not cause and effect. You have a natural cause in self love, and then you have, um, I don't know what word to use, but it's like you have a reason, you know, to to self accept because you do the work, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is also along the lines of accountability, like you mentioned prior. Like I think like well that, to me all this falls under self-awareness because I have to be aware of where I am today just as much as I have to be aware of what I want for my future. So I have to have a vision of where I want to end up even though I can't see it yet. And then I have to have awareness of what it's going to take to bridge the gap between where I am today and when the future comes that I'm not in the same spot. So that accountability factor is what's going to get us through from today to that actualized self in the future. And there's levels to it because to some extent, if you've been working in any area of your life, the version of yourself you are today is actually the actualized version of yourself compared to 10 years ago. So if you were to look at yourself 10 years ago and then look at yourself today, you'd go, oh my God, like I've come a long way. And sometimes we don't stop and look. It's very easy to look at where we are today and go, oh man, like I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And we get into this state of it's like a low level anxiety of, oh, I'm not there yet and I'm never going to get there because I'm not there yet all the time. But if you look back even a year ago, and if you've been working at it, you will see some progress. So it's just that the progress on things that are big things, they don't happen uh, you can't see the changes clearly on a day-to-day basis. You might not even be able to see it on a week to week, but maybe like over the course of like 2 or 3 months, you can actually see noticeable changes. So, and I think beyond self-awareness, there is another quality which I think is important, which I read a lot about, and that's the concept of self-esteem, which I think this term gets thought about in different ways, but there's one specific kind of self-esteem that has been written about by Dr. Nathaniel Branden, who studied self-esteem, is a doctor of psychology. Um, and this self-esteem in his definition is um, the knowledge that I can deal with whatever comes at me in life, whatever circumstances come my way. I even if I don't know how to deal with them or what's going to happen when they do come my way, I will figure it out. It's that feeling that like I can deal with whatever happens. And there are some people, that's kind of our relationship to the unknown. What is when you think about what is my relationship to the unknown, right? And that comes up a lot when we're especially when we're trying something new. For example, like you're in that journey of learning salsa professionally, and there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns of how I move my body, where I put my feet, what kind of tension am I supposed to put in my hands, how much eye contact do I make, how do I make sure I pay attention to the music and don't lose the count, all this stuff. There's all this stuff that you have to deal with, and eventually a lot of that stuff gets automated to the point where you can just enjoy the music and focus just a little bit on the moves. Um, but at the beginning when you're starting out, whether it's learning salsa or for me when I was starting to learn jujitsu, there's the amount of stuff that is unknown versus what I do know is huge. And so that's where self-esteem comes into account, where if I already learned something new before and I've gotten from beginner to mastery level, then I get a sense that, hey, at least in that case, I was able to deal with the unknown and come out at the other end, winning, right? Getting what I want. And if I start something new, I will take that same attitude and that same, it's almost like a hope or a faith that yes, there's going to be a lots of unknowns, but as they come up, I will deal with each one of those unknowns. And I think that's super important. You got to have faith in yourself. And that's where those negative critical voices, most of them, they don't matter. Like if you're learning salsa, the only voices that matter are like your instructor who's giving you feedback on how to get better, right? Or when you're reviewing your own video footage and you're going, okay, cool, I need to do this different, and you do that different, and take some notes. That's what you should be listening to, and everything else is just noise. So we have to differentiate between the signal and the noise. The signal is what we decide we're going to listen to, and anything that's not pertinent to that is all noise. So we have to stay focused. right? So if you know what you want, it's a lot easier to stay focused. But if you don't know what you want, then it's very easy just to listen to everybody.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too? You brought up Salsa example, and for the longest time, I could not even make myself dance to get out on the dance floor. I'm talking about in a social setting. And partly I think it happened because I would look at other people dance, and there would be a lot of people, like a lot of good dancers, right? And they would do all these things. And at the time, I mean, I I could do only very basic things. So automatically when I see somebody who's better than me, it would add to the level of doubt, self-doubt, that was like building up from my inside. I say this to say that I think today it's really the easiest for us to get discouraged if we constantly looking at other people and where the other people at. And again, just coming back to the social media example, because all you have to do just open Instagram or Facebook and see somebody who's really good at something, somebody who either naturally good at something, somebody who earned their right to be good, somebody who's faking and who is just putting out pretty content, that make them look good, right? So you're going to find a lot of a lot of ways to get discouraged just by comparing yourself with other people. And the reason I think it's so challenging and so tough, because it's out there, it's readily available, right? I think we naturally curious as people, and so we would want to look at what other human beings are doing. But dangerous zone in all of that is when we start looking at the person and say, well, why don't I have that? Or, maybe I'm not good enough. What can I do? Like, look at that salsa dancer. Well, how can I compete with him? What we don't take into account when we make this comparison is the amount of time that that other person spent on their craft. So for me, if I look at somebody who've been, and funny enough, man, I ask, I go out of my way to, like, when I have good dance with someone, I go out of my way to tell them, like, hey, you're amazing, great dancer. How long you've been dancing? And there's some people who've been dancing, a year and a half. I've danced with someone a week ago who danced for 2 years, and she was amazing. So I think there's a level of talent that we have to account for also. But a lot of people, they dance 8, 10, 15, 20 years. Can you imagine amount of reps that you can take in even 10 years or even 8 years? Like, and so if you're going to look at that person and tell yourself, oh my God, they're so good, how am I going to compete? No, you're not going to compete. You can't compete. But and that's a silly comparison. My point is,
Yeah, of
you
course.
did not start at the same point, right? But I think people do it all the time. And I think that's what contributed to my hesitation, right? And my anxiety of getting out on the dance floor. And I think anxiety is the right word, because it can only cause anxiety if we constantly look at other people and we compare ourselves with other people. And it's hard to do because it's so readily available. So one of the best things, in my opinion, that we can do is, to your point, look at where you started and look at the progress that you've made. It's hard. It's going to be hard because I think you're naturally going to be tempted to compare yourself with other people, because we are just social creatures. We always want social proof. We always want social feedback, right? How am I doing compared to everybody else? But if if we're doing that, I think it's a slippery slope. And then
And and real quick, as a parenthesis to that, I think it's also really important to surround yourself with people who are going to be your cheerleaders along the way, because it requires a lot of patience to stick with it and make noticeable improvements. And sometimes we can't even see it. But if we surround ourselves with people who are going to give us positive comments, positive feedback, that helps a lot, man. So,
it does, and I like the idea of people who can give me constructive feedback. I think that if I have a friend who just butters me up because he or she wants to make me feel good, it's a short-term strategy. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily help my development, right? There has
Yeah.
to be, yeah, but I think constructive feedback doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be like, how some Russian people give it. It can it can be.
Yeah.
I have to take a shot at some Russian people. Russian people can be rough, man. They could just say something very directly, and so it's a different way of communicating. But it could be a neutral feedback, meaning that, listen, I'm going to tell you my observation without making you feel low or making you feel high. This is just a matter of fact, what my observation is. And another thing that you mentioned, I think that is good, is being able to figure it out, right? When you talk about self-esteem, because life is just a bunch of unknown. The fact that I think we created this fairy tale like mindset on the West, that we should just go through life and we should know exactly what we're going to get. And this is great to plan, not to confuse the ability to plan and ability to have ambition and dreams. But I think we also, some individuals, and I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I fell prey to that, to where if I don't see the next step, I start panicking or not knowing what to do. Life, I think, at the end of the day, is just all unpredictable set of circumstances, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if you follow the news, but like in Turkey, they had a huge earthquake, earlier this week, and literally more than 10,000 people died in their buildings. Imagine, like, that's a terrible way to go. But like, nobody could predict it. Earthquakes. We still don't have technology to predict earthquakes to where we can evacuate people. So it's like, eh, it's just, we never know, right? These things can come up unexpectedly. um, and obviously that's an extreme example. I'm not saying that, if you've been in the natural disaster, you should be able to figure it out. Like, there's going to be things out of your control for sure. But I think, to your point, like, the faith aspect of it is important, because you're not going to see the next step. But if you have the mindset of, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to find the answer, then I think you're good. And what I think is, what I also think is undermined, is the fact that not talked enough. What I mean by that is that initial decision can be made. Okay, I don't know all the answers, but this is how I want to approach things. My way of moving through life is that I'm not going to fold in the face of challenges. My way of moving through life, no matter what, I'm going to try to find an answer. And that alone, if that's your value and that's how you operate in life, it can make a huge difference, because you probably can think of people who, um, just by default they go into complaining mode, or by default they kind of get, unsure of themselves. And then you have people who also don't know the answer, but they take different stance. They're like, okay, well, what's the next step? What's the answer here, right? And so that alone, you don't have the answer at the time, but you have a mindset of finding the answer, or mindset.
Your microphone is I think you're back. Yeah.
Okay, I think I
Yeah,
was
good.
getting a phone call. Yeah, so I think the only difference is how what is your default mode of operation. And that's a first step, but that could, imagine if you take a left turn to where you're going into bad neighborhood, or you're taking the right turn where you're going to a safe neighborhood. And so, like, if your mode of operation complaining, I think you're automatically taking this left turn to the bad neighborhood, right? It's going to
Mm.
take you, like, you're going to have to U-turn. You're going to have to figure out the way out of that bad neighborhood first. So you're already, from a get-go, you're going in the bad direction. um but
There's
yeah, there's a
another
lot of
there's
good stuff.
another there's another concept that relates to this that I think I've always done it subconsciously, and it comes from the fact that as humans we were I mean we're social creatures, meaning like I think we operate best emotionally when we have a group of people that we are in relationship with normally, friends, family, coworkers, training partners, etc., etc. But in our minds, I think in our minds, we have like a circle of people whose opinion we trust and whose energy we're more likely to resonate with. And I think it's an important skill to consciously choose the kinds of people that we're going to allow ourselves to resonate with, right? And we naturally do this. Like for example, one example of resonating with someone that you haven't even met before is when you watch a movie. Let's say we're watching Jason Bourne, right? And we're watching this dude freaking get out of crazy situations, and we're resonating with the hero in that movie for the 2 hours we're sitting in the theater. Or we're watching John Wick, which is about to come out next month, and we're resonating like everything, our emotions, like if he's under attack, like we're kind of emotionally invested and we're resonating with what's going on for that main character. When the main character is let down and beat down, we kind of feel that a little bit, and when the main character wins and gets a victory, we feel triumphant as well, and we leave the movie feeling like feeling good. But we're watching these narratives unfold at all times, and so I think it would be very wise to curate how many people and which people we let into that resonating sort of circle. That's that circle of trust almost, um, because the thoughts and emotions and the words and the actions that those people in our circle of trust that we experience, those things are going to affect us. So if some people are constantly looking for ways to improve and they're talking about, hey, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing today, I'm keeping accountable, I'm doing all these things, the more people we have in our lives that are living that out, it's going to seem more natural for us to do. It's going to be almost easy. It's like, okay, these 5 friends of mine are all killing it, they're all doing well, they're all staying accountable, they're posting progress, they're sharing notes, sharing victories, sharing temporary defeat and how they overcame it. It makes it difficult to be the only one who's not working at it, right? It would feel weird because you have no choice but to resonate with that social circle. And so by the same token, on social media, you know if I post something, it almost doesn't matter to me what people say because I'm not really resonating with them. Now, if somebody posts something that is congruent with what I already know of myself, cool. But if somebody posts something very destructive, then that's just I just note it as, oh look, somebody's posted something destructive. Somebody is being like, that's the world. The world is chaos. People are can be chaos. So I think that's probably one of the most important things to understand, because a lot of these things they're not solo journeys. They may feel like it. It may feel when we're putting in the work, yeah, you have to go and put in the work. You have to get up out of bed and do your thing and tackle the world. But really, we're a lot more social creatures than we realize sometimes.
We are social creatures, 100%. And I do think inner circle means a lot, because if you're hanging out with a bunch of people who not ambitious, lazy, unmotivated, then you know you're going to end up inheriting some of these traits almost, right? Um,
Or trying to carry the whole team, which is probably worse, because try to motivate somebody who doesn't want to be motivated, and you're going to waste a lot of energy just to make them move an inch when you can easily move a mile under your own strength. So
yeah, and sometimes I think people who come from difficult family situation, they may look at their family, let's say if they were in just abusive situation, um, bad parenting, whatever, and they might want to get away from that situation. So it's actually like a role modeling for what they not want for their own life. But if you are in the company of friends, you select your friends. You don't select your family, right? So it could be
exactly.
difficult to be in the family situation like that. But you have 100% control of your cohort and people that you want to hang around with. So if you choosing to be in the cohort of a bunch of losers, then it's on you, and you got to be you got to be smart enough not to get in that situation. Or if you feel like your friends went down, willingly went down to the um, to that place of despair, then you got to be strong enough to walk away from it if you don't want to be part of that. So yeah, I think there's a lot to it. Inner circle is definitely one of the things that you got to keep close watch on. So let's look at a couple of comments before we get out of here. We've been at it for 40 minutes. I appreciate you sticking around and having this convo. V said, when I started going to the gym, I had to stop looking at other people with perfect bodies because I would get self conscious and not want to do my workout. Now I pump up the music and focus on me. D said, capitalism has a way that is set up in every culture to pinpoint insecurities so people can spend millions and do not real inner work. And even then, in this woke era, we can get burned out with improvement. Then we get caught up in being judgmental and not to be able to fully understand and appreciate and respect all types of people with appropriate boundaries. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Thank you for your comments as well. My friend, any closing thoughts on today's conversation on self acceptance or anything else that we touched on today?
Closing thoughts would be to get to a place where you're getting what you need to win. Winning is getting what you want. Losing is not getting what you want. But even more so, like winning is knowing, going to sleep, knowing that you put your full effort in that mission, right? In that mission to get what we want out of life. If I went to if the days that I go to sleep and I get really good sleep and I can fall asleep easy, it's the days actually where I put in the most work. I might even be tired from putting in a lot of work. And the days where I find it hardest to go to sleep is when I woke up, I didn't do any exercise, I didn't do any reading, I didn't catch up with any friends, I didn't do any work, I slacked off, On those days where I put in no minimal effort, I actually feel like I lost. I mean, that day for sure, that day could have been more productive. So I would say like love yourself enough to give yourself permission to win every day, right? So and every day is going to look different. I know I might be sick one day and it's harder to put in effort, but like if I can put in my full effort in a day, then that to me is winning. And eventually you rack up enough wins and you'll get those even bigger victories. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. I like that. Uh, so I'll give my closing thoughts, but before I do, everyone who is tuning in live and everyone who will be watching this and recording, let me know in the comments if this conversation resonated with you. If you would like to hear more of those type of conversations, and maybe we can figure something out for the future. But for my closing thoughts, I do think that we need to be able to have balance of self love and self accountability. I think we need to find a way to accept ourselves for who we are and love ourselves for who we are, just as a person, so we can feel that self love. So it's not coming from outside external sources, so it comes from within first. So you can be your own best cheerleader first and foremost, because you are going to be the person who's going to be with you. It's almost like two people. You going to be with you. Uh, you're going to be living your mind, I guess. Your thoughts are going to be with you for the rest of your life. So that's going to be an unseparable, not separable way for you to be healthier individual, at least mentally and spiritually speaking. But then I think there's also come down to that second aspect, which is self accountability, which could be stem from your value system, because your value system identifying who you are and what's important to you and how you want to live your life. And even starting with one or two things, maybe you're not going to know the entire roadmap right away, but knowing few things that's going to define who you are, and then sticking to those things, living by those values, so you can now show tangibly who you are, not just, so it's almost like an external factor, right? More internal factor is self-love, and another one is more external factor that starts with values, which is internal, but that translates into your actions, daily actions, that you can kind of hang your head on and say, I'm really living out those values. It seems to me that this is a good place to start. And that, on that, unless you have something else to add, we can depart. Thank you so much for every single one of you who joined us live. I thoroughly enjoyed this convo. Always insightful with my dear friend Michael. And I guess until the next time, maybe we'll do it again soon.
Until next time, bro. Thanks for having me on.
See you later, bro.
See ya.
Peace, everyone.